Well, I'm wondering if you have any questions. Anything came up today for anybody? Discussions you had maybe?
Donna and I discussed on our way up what you've been talking to us, Robina, about the body wants comfort. And it's the mind.
Just speak louder, please.
Donna and I were talking as we walked up, and many things, but we were talking about how Robina's been saying the body wants comfort. It's the mind that will get you there. And it was very helpful.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, that's really the key. You know, if we think about how we think, who we are in our culture, we tend to think we're just the physical. I mean, if we're Christian, we're always aware of our soul, so we're talking about something more. At least if you're a Christian or a Muslim, you're talking about slightly more than merely your body. But if you think about it, in our culture, we're only the body, you know, so it reinforces the power of the senses. As Lama Yeshe says, we make the body the boss. You know, and the more, let's say, if we understand the Buddhist view about the mind, and you can see so clearly how mind gives huge extra importance to the role of the body, the feelings of the body. In fact, that dominates our lives. You know, what we even mean by happiness is when the body's comfortable. We mean by happiness having a lovely house with pleasant weather and buttons that get the cool when you need it, the warm when you need it, the food when you need it. It's just, it really is literally, what we mean by happiness is literally having wonderful sensory objects. Now, I'm not trying to be fundamentalist here. That's what we mean by it, you know. So we know there's more. We know there's more. We call it love, we call it kindness, we call it compassion, helping others, this kind of stuff. But the body is just so dominating for us. Unbelievable. We know the tiniest shift in the body, your whole mind gets so distressed, you know. Meaning we're just completely vulnerable. We're completely driven by our senses. And that's where it's so interesting with, you know, like with here in Asia, where they live, you know, just not trying to insult groups of people, we're all the same really. But like even in Kopan, where they've been having Westerners come for 40 years, still when you book rooms there, because they've always been struggling to have the number of people come in, they always have to sort out, Fran has to sort out the lists at the last minute. You might say you want a single room. When we're in the West, if you say you want a single room, you're going to get a damn single room and you're going to pay for it and you're going to demand your rights. That's just how we are. And all the hotels will definitely do everything they can to get you a room, because we all have this huge expectation to get everything we want, you know. So it's very shocking when we come along and Kopan says, oh, I'm sorry, we haven't got any single rooms. Oh, but I booked a single room. So I mean, the smallest thing for us. And they're up here, when you look at the way they live up in Lawudo, and it's luxurious with that in comparison with how it used to be. They're just much more flexible mentally when it comes to the body. Their ability to deal with physical difficulties is much bigger than ours. You know, we're like infants in a way. The moment we don't get what attachment wants. It's not being mean about it, it's just how it is. And that's why it's so stressful. For me, it is so clear when I analyse every year, coming up here, it's so clear it's because your body's not comfortable. It's attachment to comfort. I mean, forget sex, forget food. I mean, food is maybe comfort. But all the extra things, it's really just the attachment for the body to be comfortable, you know. In other words, our mind is so easily changed. In other words, our mind is not strong. Put it that way, your mind is not strong. I know when I used to do Kung Fu, and Mr. Lee, my teacher, we'd be doing our 30 push-ups on our knuckles, you know. It's only the body, he'd say. And of course, it's literally true. I mean, but when we know that also, I mean, look at the people who are, look at sportsmen who push their bodies to the limit. It's clearly the power of their minds. It's really clearly, is that everybody's similar. Everybody's body is similar. It's the power of your mind, you know. So the key job, if you're talking the Buddhist view, is the more and more we become familiar with what's happening in our mind, it's sort of like you're strengthening your mind becomes stronger. Meaning attachment gets weaker. Attachment is this little child in us that wants everything the way I want it. So if you're progressing, if you're practicing, your attachment gets weaker, therefore your ability, which is mental, to deal with something that attachment doesn't like becomes better, you become stronger and wiser, you know. What happened? Who's that? I can't see you, that light on. Oh, this is Kevin. He's requested to join our group for a couple of days. Yeah, we'll see what happens. But yeah, you're very welcome here. Find a chair. So really, it's learning to strengthen the mind. That's all it is. And that's not new to us. I mean, when you're a sportsman, when you work really hard, you're strengthening your mind. So I suppose the difference here is we're talking about trying to practice virtue, you know. Trying to practice virtue. And what is virtue? That means not attached, not angry, not jealous, not fearful, not depressed. It means less of that and more of perseverance, more of kindness, more of, you know, patience. That's really all it is. These words are kind of incredibly simple. What's wrong? What's wrong?
I was just looking for Christina.
What?
I was just checking whether Christina is here.
Oh, okay. Okay. So yeah, it's just learning to see your mind. And so the other thing, so the biggest point here too is that when we say happiness, we mean pleasant feelings. We need physical feelings. I mean, if you've got a pain in your neck, if you've got a headache, and you could have the best meal in the world, you wouldn't say you're happy, even though the food's divine. So, but happiness, this is a very interesting point actually. So what is happiness? Well, for the Buddha, it's really clear. It doesn't necessarily mean a happy feeling, which is what you get when you have the nice food, the nice weather, the nice temperature, the nice words, the nice praise. That's attachment getting what it wants, which indeed does trigger a happy feeling. But happiness, the Buddha's view of happiness. So okay, if you're walking up the mountain and you're stressed, your body's aching, you can't believe, like even at the bit of walk I had to do today up from the helicopter was like completely overwhelming, you know. Practically collapsed, hardly could breathe. So when the body's difficult, so then a happy mind doesn't mean having a happy feeling. I definitely didn't have happy feelings. I didn't have pleasant feelings, but you can still have a happy mind. So that means what? What does that mean? It means, and we get it. I mean, we really get it. If you're working, you think one of these sportsmen, or you go to the gym and you're exhausted, you can hardly breathe, but you are happy. So what's happening is the thoughts you're having, you are delighted that you're doing this because you see that you're succeeding and you're glad in what you're doing. So that's a happy mind. Okay, that's samsara, I go to the gym. But a happy mind is positive thoughts. That's what a happy mind is, positive thoughts. So there are happy feelings in the body, that's one thing. But the mind, if the body's having unpleasant feelings, we can still have a happy mind. And that's the point. That's the difference. That's the training. That's what practicing Dharma means. In the typical Buddhist sense, that's what it means. Because the body doesn't dominate, you know. And that's what's difficult. That's what's so difficult. And that's what practice is. Which of course means you have to see your mind. And even in the West they say we have 1,000 thoughts a second, you know. 1,000 thoughts a second. Buddha would agree. And like I've been saying, the only time we really notice our mind is when we're stressed, when things go wrong. That's why we're just learning to see our thoughts. That's the key to what Buddhism is saying. Learning to see your thoughts. And not just seeing them like, oh my God, look at my terrible thoughts, but fixing them and changing them where we can have new thoughts, you know, changing, it's like reprogramming our minds basically. So then walking up the mountain and you're walking up and this is also the one about attachment. Attachment's this, like I said, this junkie in us all the time. At the subtlest levels that we can't even believe. Lama Yeshe said, I can tell you about attachment for a whole year. We will never really begin to understand it. And and we really, I mean, the level to which it goes is phenomenal in our understanding, you know. We just see it at the grossest level. But what attachment, every second, is adjusting things to make sure that the sound, the smell, the taste, the touch, and the other fifth, whatever the fifth sense is getting what it wants. That's what attachment's job. And then as long as it's getting what it wants, then what happens is a pleasant feeling is triggered. That's the result. And that's what we want. Bottom line, you don't really want cake, you want the pleasant feeling. You know, you want the pleasant feeling that contact with the object triggers. So it's the pleasant feelings that we're desperate for. And the method we use to get pleasant feelings is to get objects of the senses. So the way attachment works, which is pervasive, is it keeps getting so as long as it gets the nice thing. So, you know, I ordered my dinner and I'd ordered vegetables and I saw a lack of carrots. I didn't see many orange on my plate. I saw mostly cabbage, right? So immediately your mind's not happy, right? Because I like my carrots. You understand what I'm saying? Just a little tiny thing. Automatically, expectation is there, which is attachment. Then the lacking of orange. So then immediately the mind then finds a fault. So then what practice would be would be happy to see cabbage, you know. Just, this is fine. Cabbages are fine. Cabbages are fine. Right there, that's practice. That's second. It's so small, it's embarrassing, you know. You just change the thought. So what attachment's doing all the time is looking for the pleasant feelings. When it gets it, then you know we hold on to it, we cling to it. That's the next job of attachment, to hold on to it and make sure we keep getting it. But then what happens is, the second the unpleasant feeling comes, then attachment shifts its focus. And it works just as hard to now be free of the unpleasant thing. So it's either working to get the pleasant thing, or it's working to be free of the unpleasant thing. Attachment's the same thing. It's the same job. It's the job that's doing all the time. So practice is seeing it and then arguing with it, just adjusting it. Cabbage is fine, right there, you know. Or walking up the mountain, my little bit of tiny mountain this morning, you know, my 20-minute mountain. 20 minutes I had. I was thinking about you guys with your 5 hours or whatever. But 20 minutes and my lungs were exploding, you know. So you feel the breath, you can look terrible, you can be puffing and panting, but your mind can still have happy thoughts. That's the skill to learn. That's the skill. That's the skill. That's practice. That's practice. Because at the moment we're like these, we're like infants. We have no control over our thoughts. Our body's experiences dictate our thoughts. So we're trying to reverse that, you know. That's practice. So that means we have to learn to distinguish, and this is the Buddhist view, because his view of the mind in one sense sounds very simplistic. Our view of the mind in the West is so complex. All these names we keep making up over the months and years of Western psychology. You know, really complex names for complex mental illnesses and complex psychiatric states. You know, but the Buddha's view is almost deceptively simple, embarrassingly simple, kind of simplistic. It appears on the surface. It's the Buddha only talks about actual states of mind, a conceptual thought. That's what Buddhist psychology is. When we think of schizophrenia, we think of a whole range of symptoms, isn't it? Do you understand what I'm saying? Massive, vast range of symptoms and many things in the external world that have triggered all those things. It's really complex, you know. But the Buddha's only ever talking about a thought in the mind. It's simple, but it really is hard to see it. Because we're so caught up, when we think of the problems, we usually think of the external thing that triggers it. So we're not really still looking at the thought itself. That's the job of being a Buddhist. That's Buddha's unique approach to the mind. And the more we practice, the more precise we're going to have to be. I mean, it seems like a joke to say that Buddha articulated 84,000 distinct different afflictions, distinct different negative states of mind. And I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a list of the 84,000. Must be sort of a million variations of them, but they're all precise, exactly precise. And it's this vast kind of map of the mind, a vast map of the mind. And that's just the negative ones, not the virtuous ones. But he, like I said, narrows it down to 3. And then if you study, when you do study the mind, you study it more depth, you study the text, you study a group of 51 that are mainly really related to what is necessary in order to meditate. But there are thousands of these states of mind. And what they're talking about is distinct, precise, conceptual thoughts. He's not discussing the external at all. There's no discussion about that. It's hard to hear this. It's extremely fascinating. So we've got these thousands upon thousands of thoughts in our mind. And the job of being a Buddhist is learning to develop this brilliant skill to discriminate between each one of them exactly, and to identify the neurotic ones, to argue with them because they have no valid basis, and to grow the virtuous ones. And then you've got the other lot that are like, I call the mechanics, that everybody needs in order to do that job properly. So one of the functions, the third category of states of mind, there's one that's called discrimination. It's happening every second. It's there every millisecond. As long as we're functioning and awake, this part of us is every millisecond distinguishing between this and that and seeing the red and the pink and the blue and the this and the distance between the door. It's constantly working. If that's gone, you'd be mentally ill. You'd be absolutely like an insane person. That's there continuously. There's another one called attention, which is there continuously, every millisecond. There's a group of 5 that are called 5 always present. They call them mental factors. We call them states of mind. And these are like the mechanics. And if they're working well, whatever you do, you'll do well. not virtuously. You can be a murderer and do it well. It's not as if it's a virtue. These parts of our mind too, the precision that we need to develop to identify those parts of our mind is very fascinating. And we're not discussing the brain. We're discussing the actual internal workings of our own consciousness, you know. It's an extremely fascinating model of the mind. And these Hindus first did it. They mapped the mind. Then, of course, the Buddhist view. And that's what our job is, if we're going to really be serious Buddhists. In the end, that's why you've got to have single point of concentration. Without that, you can't possibly do it. Not possible. The mind's too weak, the mind's too lazy, the mind's too vague. I mean, if we have 1,000 thoughts a second, we don't know any one of them, then, you know, we really have this very little awareness of what's happening in our minds, only when it's really serious, really strong, really loud, really shouting, you know. And even then, you know, you start to look at, for example, if we're trying to just identify the different delusions, there's a particular way that attachment works that you only really learn about later. It's much more pervasive than ordinary attachment to sex and drugs and rock and roll, you know. And there's one attachment that really is one of the deepest ones we've all got, the most pervasive, and the deepest one to go. They actually call it attachment to reputation, which is attachment to how we're seen by other people. This is the most pervasive of all. This is the one that really is the cause of the depth of our suffering, and the one that's it's really, putting it more simply, it's simply the craving to be liked. It's utterly pervasive. So what I'm getting at here in a particular point, we'll go into about this later, but there's another state of mind that they refer to as pride. Now we all know that word. We kind of feel embarrassed by it. So you don't think of it, you don't really think of, oh, I'm such a proud person. We don't think like that. It seems very old-fashioned to think of pride as a mental problem, you know. Sounds like religion. But it's one of our major delusions. Now, it's what's interesting about pride, though, and I'm getting to a point now, it's the flip side of it is low self-esteem. There's no term like that in Buddhist psychology. It's very interesting. But low self-esteem is the flip side of pride. In other words, all the delusions, their key function is they exaggerate, they embellish, they're not accurate. This is the key point the Buddha makes. The virtues are accurate states of mind. Mightn't be evident to us, but we'll discuss all this. But the delusions in their nature, the afflictions, the delusions, the mental illnesses are in their nature distortions. They're not valid assessments of something. So this low self-esteem is an over-exaggeration of our bad qualities. As with all the delusions, it's very self-centered, it's very self-conscious. We're very conscious of ourselves. That's why we say she's very self-conscious in an unhappy way, you know. So, but it really sounds very distressing to hear that the flip side, the real delusion we've got is pride, which is an over-exaggeration of our importance and our sense of entitlement. But it's very linked to attachment, and it's hard to hear the difference. So when you think of attachment to reputation, wanting people to like you, and then you think of pride, which is about how you're seen, they seem similar. So these delusions, if there are 84,000 of them, God knows they must be so subtle, the differences, I can't believe it, you know. But this is the kind of clarity, using the Buddhist view, that we need to cultivate, to notice, because every second there are only thoughts in there, coming along with feelings as well, the feelings of the body, but they come down to being thoughts. That's the clarity we have to cultivate. We have to use this discrimination, one of the mechanics of our mind, pay attention, have discrimination, and that should be working continuously to be identifying the difference between what's happening in our mind every second and identifying the different thoughts. The negative ones, adjusting them, arguing with them, lessening them, and the virtuous ones growing, you know. And we get more and more control over that process. Not like this victim of our thoughts. We feel like victims of our thoughts because the thoughts come unasked, don't they? They seem to just flood in. We don't seem to request them to come. We don't seem to make up our thoughts. We don't seem to sit there and think, oh, I've got no thoughts. What will I think about? No, they're overwhelming. They're driven because they're all our habits that we've been brainwashed for so long, just our habits, you know. So we've got to cultivate the ability to see what's there, plus cultivate new thoughts. So practice is cultivating new thoughts. And that's what gets a bit depressing. So then you're sitting there, you know, you're attached to getting your carrots and don't want the cabbage. Let's say really seriously, and you're struggling with it. Then you say cabbage is fine. But when you say cabbage is fine, in the beginning you mightn't believe it. It doesn't work immediately. So you think, oh, that's just not, what's the point of saying that? But you've got to practice it. I mean, you don't do something for the first time and it just works magically. You've been playing the piano a long time the wrong way. Fixing it doesn't work, doesn't come overnight. You've got to keep saying it. So you've got to practice being happy with cabbage. Even though you're still distressed, you know. Do you understand my point? You've You've got to keep practicing it. That's a happy mind. Even though you're feeling unhappy, that's a happy mind. A happy mind is a virtuous mind. A happy mind is a virtuous mind. So you can be sitting there with agony, with headaches, pain, grief, but your mind can still be happy because you're consciously having virtuous thoughts about it. That's the skill that we have to cultivate. Not just be the victims of what thoughts are there, but we have to cultivate new thoughts. The way we're a bit passive about it. In other words, at the moment, if we don't know music, you get to the piano and you put your hands on the piano and you make a big mess. You don't just kind of, oh my God, what a mess. You now know you've got to learn new notes. So with our mind, it's the same, but we don't tend to think that. We just look at what's in our mind. Oh, I've got such a bad motivation. Well, excuse me, you can change it. So we have to not only just see what's arising in the mind and work with them, but actively cultivate new thoughts. That's really just like learning anything new. You cultivate new things. You cultivate new thoughts. So this is what practice is. And it seems kind of small. But then when you can do the small ones, you can do the big ones. When the husband dies, when the person leaves you, when you get accused of something, when the terrible things happen, when the cancer comes, then we're ready for it, And then no matter what, we would be able to say we have got a happy mind. That's not wrong. It's not, a happy doesn't just, like I'm saying, a really important point, doesn't just mean all excited and having a good feeling. That's just stupid. Happy is virtuous. A happy mind is a virtuous mind. An unhappy mind is a mind that's angry, depressed, jealous, sad, not sad, depressed, low self-esteem, all the delusions. That's an unhappy mind. A happy mind is a virtuous mind. A person who's a kind mind, generous, patient, content, loving. It seems so corny, but this is the point. And we're practicing that. And that's what happiness comes from. Of course, the delusions are so ancient. And that's one of the biggest things that we have to remember. There's going to be a long time before the delusions disappear altogether. So they're going to get less. As our virtues get stronger, the delusions get weaker. That's natural. But they're going to be there. And until we've got concentration, we're going to have thousands of uncontrolled thoughts. It's just the way it is. But we learn, I like to call them my roommates. And what practice is learning to live with your roommates. You learn to live with them. But what we want to do is desperately make them all go away, We're fanatic. They're not going to do that. They're not going to go away. They're old habits. They're old habits. So learning to see them, distinguish them, identify them, label them, recognize it's a delusion, recognize it causes you pain, and then you counteract it with a virtuous thought, and then slowly, and that job, you keep getting better at that job. Meanwhile, you're learning to live with all the crazy roommates, and whereas with attachment, you see, attachment can't stand them. Attachment wants them all to go away. And that's the big misconception we have about meditation. To make all the thoughts go away. That's just foolish. Learning to live with them is really important. And we should want to hear them because they're the problem. Should want to hear them. We should be delighted to meet the next level of anger, the next level of delusions. We should be so happy to identify them because they're the problem. It's like when you're at the gym, you discover another muscle that needs a bit of work. You're so glad to discover it. Not, oh my God, no. But this is the hardest job we'll ever do, And this is why in the Buddhist approach, the Tibetan Buddhist approach especially, this is where all the stuff that looks like religious fits in. They say any of the practices we do that connect to the Buddhas, because Buddhas are these beings like you and me who have become outrageously amazing, wise, compassionate consciousnesses that pervade the universe. Such potent, amazing, powerful beings who exist, real people who exist. So any practice we do that bring them in, that we bring them into our practice, these practices work at a very deep level. They work at a very sublime level. They put atomic bombs on the really old habits in our mind, deeper than we can see at the surface. The real job of being a Buddhist is what I'm saying, working on your mind. But our mind's not strong enough to do that. It's a bit like, I use the analogy, even, you're trying to, you see Federer play tennis, and you can't believe how ingenious he is. It looks like so simple, so easy. And you ask him, please show me how to play tennis like that. We know perfectly well what he'll tell us to do. You work for 20 years doing this. You do lots of jogging and lots of exercise and go on diets and go on nutrition and learn skills and bounce balls for a million years and do backhands for 45 hours. I mean, it would look so boring. No, you didn't answer my question. He'll repeat his answer. That's like, the Tibetans call it the preliminary practices. They're the things that prime your mind ready to do the actual job of lessening delusions and growing virtues. So then doing all the jogging and the running and the nutrition is priming your body and your mind to be able to get on the tennis court to hit the balls. It doesn't look directly related to tennis. Well, doing these things doesn't look directly related to working on your mind, but these are the really powerful practices. When you do like any of the Buddhas, the practices using the Buddhas or the mantras, doing the purification practices, they're said to be super powerful at a very deep level. And we'll talk more about those. And one takes on these practices according to one's own ability and according to one's own choice. You're the boss. You track you go at your own pace. So we have to have this delight to see our minds. Because the irony of attachment, the deepest energy of attachment, and we're born with it, it's from past practice, Buddha says, is this feeling of dissatisfaction, which I think is what we call low self-esteem. It's just dissatisfaction. And I think it is, we call it low self-esteem. We just don't, dissatisfaction sounds very kind of boring. I'm dissatisfied. It sounds kind of like, not deep enough. I think we call it low self-esteem. It just means nothing's ever enough. It means I'm never enough. That's the point. I'm never enough. I never look the right. My body isn't enough, and what I do isn't enough, and what I achieve isn't enough. But I think but then also you can see the dissatisfaction, which is the function of attachment, but also you can still see there is an extra level in some people of this one, which is the flip side of pride, which is I'm no good. So they're different, but they've got such similar flavor. In the same way that attachment to being seen as a nice person is different from pride. So we've got to have the distinction. We've got to know the difference in our own mind and recognize these different thoughts. It's very hard to see. And again, like I'm saying, it's a very precise model. They all define very exactly these different states of mind. So slowly, slowly. Any other questions about anything? We can just do a little meditate and go to bed, I think. Any other questions? Points to make? Things that have come up? And the thing to remember, why would you want to have a happy mind? Because you want to be happy. It's so simple. It's just for our benefit. It's so simple. It's for our benefit. Another way of saying it is we have to learn to reinterpret things. That's one way of saying what Buddha's saying, really. We have to learn to see things differently, change our view, change our interpretation. Yeah. So anyway, just close your eyes and just watch your mind for a few minutes. It's the first part of this Mahamudra meditation, which we'll talk about more. Just simply get your body comfy. Just be comfortable. Be natural. Be very natural. Nothing special. Be very natural. Be very natural. And just close your eyes because it's easy to get distracted. And just pay attention. Pay attention. With determination for 3 or 4 minutes. I'm going to pay attention to whatever pops up in my mind. That's it. That's it. I'm going to pay attention. So the attention, think of attention as part of your mind. It's actually one of these mechanics. And we're trying to train it to be focused. So think of it as a part of your mind, watching whatever pops up in the background of your mind. Pay attention. Keep your mind sharp. Pay attention. So relax your mind now. That's it, just 2, 3, 4 minutes, training. It's training, you know, training. So we just delight what we've done today. Making this effort to walk up the mountain, to go to Lawudo, to do a retreat, to look into our minds, to practice, to create merit, to help the place. This is marvelous. Rinpoche's got a vision up there above his cave. You'll see he wants to build this special, like a replica of Guru Rinpoche's Pure Land, which is, you know, you see the mandalas on the pictures. They're round and they're really just a map. They're like an architectural plan of a particular abode of the different beings, the Buddhas, you know. So there's a tradition in Tibetan Buddhists to build a replica in real form of the Pure Land of Guru Rinpoche, Padmasambhava. So Rinpoche wants to build that, so we're trying to raise money. So the half of the money we're raising, the $500 we're giving to Lawudo, half of it goes to Sangye, who's the director, Rinpoche's brother. He runs the centre, so that's paying for our stay. And there's a bit of donation left over, and then the other half goes to Rinpoche for his plan, for his Guru Rinpoche plan. So we're delighted we're doing this to help Rinpoche grow the place, that the retreat centre grows, because it's very special, very blessed. Anybody who's meditated there say it's a very special place. I mean, Lawudo Lama is very famous from the past life, you know, and all up there, they all adore the Lawudo Lama. When he comes up, Rinpoche comes up, he's mobbed all the way. People just love him, you know. He's considered a very special meditator. So it's we think we're delighted that we're helping the place grow. So it's our own personal practice as well as helping the place grow, which is fantastic. So we delight at what we're doing. We delight in this. And then we dedicate, just thinking all these thoughts we've had today, all these seeds we've planted, this effort we're making, none of it goes astray. How fantastic. Rejoice for ourselves and each other. And may these seeds that we're planting continue to grow and eventually manifest as our own marvellous potential for our sake and the sake of others. Changchub Semchog Rinpoche, Make Panam Kegu Chig Kepa Nyampa, Mepa Yang Gong Ne Gong Du Paba Shog. May compassion, bodhicitta, grow and grow in the hearts of all. Okay, have a good sleep and a good day tomorrow.